Okay, welcome. I'm Bill Cohen. I am chair of the Department of English, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this lecture by our B.B. Koch Petru Critic in Residence for 2012-13, Professor W.J.T. Mitchell, who is Gaylord Donnelly Distinguished Service Professor of English and Art History at the University of Chicago. Professor Oren Wong will introduce our speaker in a moment, and after the lecture, we will have a lavish reception in the lobby, one floor up, so please proceed upstairs to enjoy the food, drink, and conversation after the talk. I'd like to say a word about the series. The B.B. Koch Petru Speaker Series was established in 1990 through the generous gift of an endowment from the John and B.B. Petru Foundation. This series, the most prestigious in our department, honors B.B. Koch Petru, the late wife of John Petru and a University of Maryland graduate. Their son, David, an alumnus of our department, was instrumental with his father in setting up the original lecture series. In 2010, the Petru family kindly allowed the English department to expand Petru events to include writers and critics in residence, readings, multiple lectures, and conferences. Petru events are intended to be, and I quote, the hallmark of distinguished academic excellence. That intention will certainly be fulfilled by our critic in residence today. And now let me turn things over to my colleague, Professor Oren Wong, who will in turn introduce this afternoon's speaker. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes? Yeah, okay. Kind of? Up? This up or my voice up? You're on both? How's that? Okay, Lou's still kind of giving me this kind of frown. I actually warned Tom. This is the first time I've gotten to introduce him in close to 25 years, so I'm going to lay it on pretty thick. W.J.T., or Tom Mitchell, is a Gaylord Donnelly Professor of English and Art History at the University of Chicago and the editor of one of the premier journals of interdisciplinary thought in the humanities, Critical Inquiry. He is a prolific scholar, author of numerous articles on subjects ranging from William Blake to Maya Lin to Spike Lee, and of 7 field-shaping books, with his talk coming from number 8. So don't be surprised if he leaves here already working on numbers 9, 10, or 11. He is also the recipient of a host of prestigious honors, prizes, and grants, including Guggenheim and NEH fellowships and the Modern Language Association's James Russell Lowell Award for his 2006 book, What Do Pictures Want? In 2003, Tom Mitchell also received the University of Chicago's Faculty Award for Excellence in Graduate Teaching. If you permit me, I bring this final honor up to connect it to a personal anecdote, actually to contest something Tom once confided to me back in the day, something I'm sure he doesn't remember when he took me out for some Thai food after my doctoral defense. He was having some issues with one of the courses he was teaching, as we all sometimes do, and at some point during our meal, he turned to me and said, shaking his head slightly, "I'm not a good teacher, Warren." Not for the first time, Tom had said something to me in his typically soft-spoken manner that left me stunned, slack-jawed, speechless. You get the idea. But of course, all those other times constituted numerous counterexamples to what he was saying now. If I had been previously stunned into silence before by something Tom had said, it was because of how he had quietly but effectively reordered my sense of scale when it came to what we could do with our critical thought. For Tom Mitchell is not a good teacher. He's a great one, a sentiment that many can attest to, not only those privileged to have taken a course from him, but also the countless readers of his work, as well as those inspired by his 30-odd-year intellectual stewardship of critical inquiry, whose name says it all. I've learned many things from Tom Mitchell, but first and foremost, I learned never to shrink from or become complacent when faced with the adventurousness of critical thought. We need to get things right. We need to do justice to our archives, text, and documents but we need to think big. We need to do so in a way that's nuanced, tough-minded, and generous. In Tom's case, also in a critical prose, enviable in its ability to wed provocation and clarity, difficulty and accessibility together. But what Tom especially taught me is that we need to have ambition for our ideas, because that is the only response to this difficult and complex world that matters. The Romantic poet William Blake, Tom's chief lodestar throughout the years, certainly thought and wrote big. Tom himself once suggestively linked Blake to both Milton and Derrida, social and artistic radicals who each in their own particular historical moment sought, in Blake's words, to keep the divine vision in a time of trouble. That's a powerful line, and one that I believe could also characterize what Tom has been doing for us, keeping the divine vision in a time of trouble. It certainly speaks to how he has been our guide, our Virgil, through the jungle of the imaginary, through the myriad ways that images from Blake's Prince to Wittgenstein's formulations, to Jurassic Park's dinosaurs, to the photos of Abu Ghraib, grip, haunt, and befriend us. It certainly speaks to the stakes behind Tom's dedication to ambitious critical thought, especially when narratives of the future stubbornly resist any possibility of radical social transformation or indeed of any future at all. And it also speaks to the courage in Tom that underwrites his belief in what we do as intellectuals. Tom's commitment in the strong sense that Adorno meant when using the term, especially when reversals of history and personal loss test our conviction that thinking critically matters. Soft-spoken and casual in both his erudition and wit, Tom is also a fighter, and I've come to admire that especially about him. David L. Clark has recently spoken of the war being waged against thought here and elsewhere. I'd readily say that in such a conflict, Tom has consistently been on the side of the angels, except that, as any reader of Blake knows, things are more complicated than that. In Blake's sublime poem, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, devils are more interesting, less orthodox, and more militant than angels, traits that all aptly describe the critical work that Tom models for us. In that poem, Blake talks about energy being pure delight, and that would be a good way of describing Tom's critical labor too. Also at one point in The Marriage, the speaker, overcome by the radiance of his poetic thought, its infinitude and complexity, simply says, too much. Too much, perhaps, though never enough when it comes to getting our dose of W.J.T. Mitchell. Please welcome Tom, this year's Petru's Critic in Residence, to the University of Maryland.
Well, despite what Oren says, I really am not a very good teacher, but I have been blessed to have great students, and among them Oren. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to think, there was a time when he was actually sitting there in my class and I thought I was teaching him something. And there are many other people like that, and I've just been very fortunate to have people who taught me how to be a teacher. First, a warning. This is going to be long, but the good news is there will be film clips that interrupt my discourse. And the second is a quotation from Oscar Wilde. All criticism is to some extent, and not even to some extent, all criticism is autobiography, as Wilde said. But this particular lecture is going to be more autobiographical than any that I've given before. It's a report on a seminar that I taught along with my colleague, literary scholar Françoise Meltzer, in the winter of